And let's begin with the pronunciation itself. Since you guys have opted for finance, so I thought I'll start with finance and then we will go with move ahead with the subject which I will be teaching you, securities analysis and portfolio management. So let's break down what finance is, right? And let's begin with the pronunciation. So should we pronounce this as finance or is it finance? Which is the right pronunciation? Is it finance or finance? What do you think is the right one? The answer is both are correct. It all depends on whether you're using British or US accent. So whether you say finance or finance doesn't matter because in India we follow both. Finance or finance does not matter. So what exactly finance is? Now the answer generally given by students when I ask them what is finance, they say finance means money, finance means capital required to do business, finance means loan, finance means how you manage money. So these are the typical answers what I get from students. But it's better to have a definition because definition will tell us what the subject is and what are the boundaries of subject. If the definition is very comprehensive, we also get to learn the boundaries or the scope of the subject. So one very simple definition which makes a lot of sense, even though it is simple, goes like this. So finance is defined as an art and science of managing funds and other assets. So let me repeat the definition. Finance is defined as an art and science of managing funds and other assets. So during one of my interactions with MBA students, I was giving this definition, and one student stood up and he said, "Sir, if finance is science and if finance is arts, then why commerce students are studying this subject?" That was a very interesting question, which I remember. So the reason why I mentioned this question is because you need to understand what you mean by science and why finance is called science, and what do you mean by art and why finance is called an art, right? So finance is an art and science both of managing funds and other assets. What exactly science is? Science is defined as a systemized body of knowledge which has universal acceptability. So to make it a little more simple, science is a systematic way of doing things. Systematic way of doing things. So do you think finance should also be systematic? And what happens when finance is not systematic? Now, since most of you are, uh, some of you are employed, some of you are salaried, right? So do you have an account of how much money you made in the year 2020 from Jan till now? How much money did you make? From where did you get that money from? What were the sources through which you got the money? And how did you spend that money? So what were your sources of revenue or receipts? And how did you channelize this revenue from different sources? Where did you spend them? So do you have a comprehensive record of all that money what you earned and all that money what you have spent? Do you maintain the records? What about, let's say, your parents? Do they have a summary of how much they have earned in the last 10 or 15 years and how did they spend all that money? The answer is forget about last 5, 10 years. Most of the people, the tendency in the society is we don't remember what happened 1 week back, right? So usually the first week of every month seems to be a very jovial week because your salary gets credited. This is when you get uh, inflow of cash, and after 10 days, first 10 days of the month seems to be very good, very nice because you have access to cash. That means you have power to spend, power to buy things. But what happens in the last 5 days, things becomes difficult because all that money what you got in the form of different sources of income gets disappeared. So People don't have a record. How did they spend the salary, what they have received? Where did they spend? Maybe here and there they remember a few important things. But by and large, most of the people in our society don't know where the money comes from and how it flows, where it flows. So that's the problem. And that's one of the reasons why most of us are not very good at managing funds. We're not good at managing our finances. And if you're not good at managing your finances, that is when you will not be able to achieve all that what you dream, all that what you aspire, or in technical language, you will not be able to achieve your financial goals if you do not manage your finances well. But that's not the case, right? As individuals, we are not good at managing funds because we don't remember where the money comes and how it gets spent. But that's not the case with companies. That's not the case with institutions, right? You see, you have joined St. Joseph's College, which was established in the year 1882. It's a very historic institution, right? So if you go to our finance department and ask them who are the finance officer is, how much did we receive in the year 1882, hundreds of years back, right? In the year 1882, what were our sources of funds and how did we spend this? They will have a record. They will have a record for each and every penny that was earned and each and every penny that was spent. So same thing applies to any institution. In fact, in companies, you have to have proper accounting system. The whole purpose of accounting is to keep a tab of all the money that flows in and all the money that flows out. So why can't we as individuals follow this approach, what the companies follow? Companies, institutions, organizations follow a systematic approach of managing funds. Every money, every single penny gets accounted, right? But when it comes to individuals like us, unfortunately, we don't do it. And that's one of the reasons why most of us end up remaining economically in the same status. We don't progress, right? You're probably somebody who's born in middle class continues to remain in the same level, does not grows up the ladder, right? It is possible to progress in your economic status, provided first you should have a system approach for managing your fund. It does not matter whether your salary is lump sum, whether your salary is handsome, whether your salary is very lucrative or not, whether you're earning small amount of money or big amount of money, that's secondary. But what is important is that do you have a system approach, a proper approach of managing your uh, money, right? Managing your finances. So that's very important. So that's the reason why finance is defined as science, a systematic way of doing things. Some of the other principles which we apply in other subjects cannot be applied here, right? Subjects like human resource management, which some of you have done your diploma in human resource management. What does human resource management talks about? It talks about utilizing the resources, getting best of the available resources, right? Utilize the resource to to the maximum extent, right? And that is what most of the human resource managers do. They ensure that the human resources in the organization is not idle, right? If somebody who does not, who is an employee who's not occupied throughout the working hours, immediately the HR will take a note of that and come up with some alternative. How can we ensure that the employees are occupied, right? So you have to take best out of, right? You have to ensure that the employees are engaged and you're taking maximum work out of it. You have to get maximum best possible from the employees. Can we apply the same principle here in case of finances? Have you ever come across any organization that says utilize your financial resources to best possible extent, use them as much as possible, right? We don't apply the principle of what we apply for human resources here, because human resources, yes, we have to make use of them, right? Try to get best out of them, but we can't do this in case of finance. So there is no maximum utilization in finance, but there is optimum utilization. Use it only if it is absolute necessary. But do we do this in our personal day-to-day life? Do we? No. The moment we have income in our, the moment we have some money in our wallet, in our pocket, we always think, how can we, right? You have so many things to eat, so many things to buy that the money disappears, even though you don't prioritize what is necessary and what is not. Yes, of course, you have to enjoy your life, but you have to prioritize, right? You have to think of how do I manage my expenses. You have to ensure that you don't end up spending on unnecessary and needless things. But that, unfortunately, that is what most of us do. People like us, we don't manage our finances well, so we don't apply that scientific approach of managing funds. Now let me talk about the other aspect, what I mentioned, that finance is not just science, it is also an art. Now, what exactly do you mean by art? So art is a skill. Art is a skill, right? Now, what is a skill? Skill is defined as ability to perform a certain task. So, do you think that in order to manage finance, you should have important skills? Is managing finance a skill? If it is a skill, then what kind of skill is this? I would say finance is an art. It is a skill of making little money into more money. In simple words, you have to make little into more. So how do we do this? We do the opposite. All that money, what we earn, right? At the end of the month, it becomes little or it totally disappears. But we should do opposite, right? Little has to become more. So how do we do it? How do we do this? This is what skill is all about. This is what you have to do as a finance manager, make little into more. And that is what every company does. Every company does this, right? Now, one of the popular, well-known brands when it comes to e-commerce in India is Flipkart. So Flipkart is India's Amazon, right? Amazon was not there in India. It had recently ventured into Indian market, but a couple of years back, maybe 10 years back, Amazon existence was totally new in India. But before that, it was Flipkart, which was dominating the Indian e-commerce industry. Even now, it continues to be a market leader. So if you look at the history of Flipkart, if you look at their roots, one of the world's biggest e-commerce company, if you look at their roots, they had a very humble beginning. They started only in the year 2007. 2007 is not too old. It's recent, right? 2007. And they started their venture with a capital of just 5 lakh rupees. 5 lakh rupees was their initial investment. And that's how they began their journey. Two friends, Sachin Bansal and Vinny Bansal, so both started this venture. They're not brothers, they're friends. So initially they started as a bookstore, online bookstore. So probably they would visit the marketplace in Bangalore. You know, you have a very popular uh, uh, place, street, avenue, road, which is known for bookstores. So these two guys used to go there, and whoever used to purchase books from a bookstore, hand over a pamphlet to them. Right now, look at the strategy. Generally, you see on the roadside, people give you this advertisement pamphlets, right? And they give it to everybody. Whoever walks in, they just give. But these two people were not giving it to everybody else. Only somebody who buys books and comes out of the store, they would go them and hand over this pamphlet and say, "Sir, why you want to travel all the way in this traffic pollution to buy books? Please visit our site, place the order for the books, and we will deliver these books to your residence, to your place." That's how the journey began. And in the year 2017, 2007 to 2017, just 10 years, right? A company which was worth only 5 lakhs, a company which was worth only for 5 lakhs when they started, its net worth was $16 billion, one six, $16 billion in the year 2017. So how is this transformation possible? A company which is worth only 5 lakh rupees 10 years back becomes a $1 billion company, not just 1 billion, $16 billion. And this company, which is worth $16 billion, was purchased by American giant retailer Walmart. So Walmart acquired this Indian company, Flipkart, for a whopping $16 billion. So this is what finance is all about. And this is what I mentioned. Skill means making little into more. So how does this 5 lakh became $16 billion? What did Flipkart do? Right? Of course, strategies. Most of the companies use various kinds of strategies for growth and for progress. So, of course, Flipkart has also used various kinds of strategies to reach that number one position. Even now, it continues to dominate the Indian e-commerce platform for a simple reason that it outsmarts its competitors. What Flipkart has, probably the competitors do not have that, right? Amazon, which is a global leader in e-commerce, continues to be a number two player in India. Despite of being a global leader, in India it continues to be number two, but Flipkart continues to dominate the Indian e-commerce market. So technically, even though various strategies are involved in the growth and performance of the company, but all these strategies are aimed at increasing the net worth of the company. Ultimately, it boils down to finance, right? So 5 lakh worth company becoming a $16 billion company, that too in a span of just 10 years, right? So this is what finance is all about. It is making little money into more, right? So what happened recently, couple of I think semesters back, I was teaching this paper, financial management, and I gave an assignment to my students. I said them, see students, you have to come up with a plan wherein you have to ensure that the revenue of St. Joseph's College, right? Assume its revenue per annum is 10 crores, it doubles. So come up with strategies, apply your finance sense IQ, and come up with strategies that ensures that the revenue of the college doubles from 10 crore to 20 crore per annum. So you come up with some practical and feasible ideas. So I'll give you a week's time. So come and present the ideas in the next week. So now it was a time for presentation. So students started presenting. So how do we make a revenue which is at 10 crores, right, into 20 crores? So how do we double up our revenue? So students started giving up various ideas. One of the idea was to increase the fees, double the fees, revenue will also double. So if a fees is for PhD diploma, I don't know how much is the fees. If it is 60,000, make it 1,20,000. Automatically, your overall revenue will increase. So that was one of the idea. Another idea was to start in new institutions which we don't have at the moment. Why don't we start a medical college, which we don't have? We don't have a medical college in Bangalore. Why don't we start an engineering college? So these were some of the ideas that were given by students, but I told them, see, some of the ideas what you have given, okay, fine, we can increase the revenue. But the catch here is, one guy said to double the fees. If you double the fees now, that might actually stand against the ethos of the college, right? So ethos of the college says that you have to give the education to all, to the masses, right? So when you charge the fees high, it's not an inclusive education, right? You can't have only education for the rich and neglect the others. So, and in case if you increase the revenue also, today's generation students are not the one which were like 30 years back, right? Most of us have become very smart now, right? You have to also think from the viewpoint of marketing, even though I'm not teaching marketing to you people, but you have to also think from the perspective of marketing, right? If I double the fees and if I don't provide value for your money, what will happen? That will backfire. So you will spread negative reviews and it will bring down the reputation of the institution. If I'm charging 1,20,000 for a particular course, I have to give value for that 1,20,000 what you have paid in terms of infrastructure, in terms of placements, right? So that is how most of the institutions operate these days. Second option, which was given by one of the student, was to start new institution, which is a very risky option, because if you want to have a new medical college established in the city of Bangalore, you have to spend millions of rupees for that. So I said it's a very bad idea, because I asked you an idea to increase the revenue and you have given an idea wherein I have to spend a lot of money. So what is the solution? What is the answer for my question? So I made it a little more complicated. I said, see, you have to double the revenue without having to spend any money. Is it possible? Without having to spend money, can we double our revenues? Is it possible? Forget about college. Even for an educational institution, let's say you're one of the CEOs of a very reputed multinational company. Is it possible to double your revenue without having to spend money? Is it possible?
Yes, so it is.
It is possible. Okay. So Sana said it is possible. So any ideas for this? Without having to spend money, how can you double your revenues?
So you can actually cut down unnecessary expenses. Like if you have more of unnecessary stuff, you could
Mhm.
actually unemploy them and take them for part time. So you could play less systematically when your revenue increases. At the same time, even you can increase your classroom occupancy levels at least by 5-10%, because St. Joseph already has a lot of applications coming in. Just because of the restrictions, you cut down few applications. So even that can add up to your revenue.
Okay, so if you want to expand your operational capacity, again, it requires better infrastructure because you can't have 100 students in an 80-seater capacity. But we can do that. But again, it will affect the teaching learning process. And again, think the student from the perspective of marketing. Student is like a customer. If I'm charging you fees and if I'm not giving you the right ambience, right atmosphere, then it will have some sort of a negative implication, right? So again, it will damage our brand reputation. Of course, cutting down the cost, removing the staff is also quite challenging because I have to also look at my competitors, because our competitors are also very reputed institutions. So if I ask you who are the competitors of St. Joseph's College, you may say Christ University, Jain, Mount Carmel's College, Jyoti Niwas College. These are reputed institutions. They are paying well. If I cut down on the cost, what will happen? All my staff, good staff, will go there. Again, that will affect my teaching learning process. So we have to think critically, and I appreciate that you gave some ideas, right? So we have to also critically evaluate your idea. Now I'll tell you what we are doing to develop our revenue, right? Now you see, you have so many different St. Joseph's institutions. You would have seen, if you're a Bangalorean, you know there are multiple campuses. The campus in which you have enrolled is the Shantinagar Langford Town campus, right?
So
And then we also have St. Joseph's Boys High School. Have you seen European Boys High School, which is on the Museum Road? Then we have St. Joseph's Indian Boys High School, which is opposite to your UB Towers. Then we have St. Joseph's Pre-University College. So I'll tell you how to develop our revenues without having to spend a single penny. The catch here is you have to do a critical appraisal of your existing resources. First, understand what resources do you have. And one of the biggest resource of St. Joseph's Institution is its location. We are strategically located in the central business district. We are located, in simple words, in the heart of the city. So what we do is, in one of the campuses on Museum Road, which is a prime center, right? We have St. Joseph's Pre-University College, which runs from morning 8 to 3:30. The same campus becomes St. Joseph's Evening College from evening 5 to 9. Same campus, two courses being run. Morning it is a pre-university college, and in the evening it becomes St. Joseph's Evening College. And on Sundays, we also run an MBA twinning program in the same campus, which occupies 1,500 students. And behind the campus, we have St. Joseph's Boys High School, which has a very wonderful ground. And this ground is used for exhibitions. So you can hire this ground on Sundays and Saturdays and public holidays, and you can organize exhibition, you can organize music concerts, right? We also have auditorium which can be taken on rent. And if you visit our UB City, St. Joseph's Indian Boys High School, from UB City, the entire road stretch, we have 13 advertisement hoardings capable of earning lakhs of rupees for us. So the point I wanted to make you is, in order to earn money, you don't have to spend money. Sometimes you have to think of how can I use my existing resources to create more revenue. And that is what even big companies do. I've given you an example of St. Joseph's, how we make money, how we use our existing resources. The campus which you are enrolled for the admission, the same campus, now from this year onwards, we have started one more shift. Shift one starts at morning 7, gets over at 11:30. Next shift starts at 12, gets over at 4:30. And probably in the future, we may also have third shift that starts at 5 o'clock and ends at 9. So we are not spending even a penny in terms of infrastructure. We are using the same infrastructure. Can you recall the definition of finance, what I gave? Finance is an art and science of managing funds and other assets. So what are we managing? Well, our other assets, land, building, all these are assets. So that's what finance is. How do you leverage your existing resources to make more and more money? And that is what even bigger organizations do, right? Now, when you visit a Puma store, Puma is India's leading number one sports and apparel brand. Ultimately, Puma had to overtake some of the big competitors like Nike and Adidas, which it did effectively. And within short span of time, it has become India's number one sports and apparel brand, right? And when you visit a Puma store, you will find Ferrari merchandise, which means that you can buy Ferrari T-shirt, Ferrari jackets, Ferrari cap, Ferrari shoes, all sorts of merchandise. Right? Does Ferrari manufactures clothes also? Do you think Ferrari manufactures all this?
No.
It does not. Ferrari is into what? Ferrari is world's leading super sports car maker, right? Originating from Italy. It's a premium super sports car brand, right? I mean, you can't afford to have a Ferrari unless you're a filthy rich person. So what Ferrari does is it leverages its brand name. So when we say assets, don't think only land and building is an asset. Even a brand name is also an asset, right? So Ferrari has entered into a licensing agreement with Puma. What this licensing agreement is called a brand licensing agreement, in which you permit others to use your brand name in return for a lump sum royalty which runs in millions of dollars. So now Puma has the rights, Puma has acquired the rights to use brand Ferrari on its merchandise. So do you think Ferrari is a premium brand? I mean, imagine if I come in Ferrari to in Ferrari to your college, what will happen? Everybody will take selfie, not with me, but my car, because it talks about my social status. It talks about the prestige, right? So Ferrari is a luxury brand, right? So therefore, when you have a strong brand name, you can make money out of your brand also. And that is what Ferrari does. Ferrari makes more money from brand licensing than it makes from making cars, right? Because Ferrari cars, it's not a mass production car, it's a very niche segment. So Ferrari generates more revenue from brand licensing. Like this, Ferrari has licensing with so many organizations. In India, it has Puma, also Acer. Acer also has a brand licensing agreement with Ferrari, in which Acer has introduced a new range of laptops, ultra modern and high-end laptops, mobile phones, gaming laptops, which has Ferrari logo on it. So this is how Ferrari leverages its brand name to make more money. And most of the companies do this. When you have a strong brand reputation, why don't you use your brand name and make more and more money? And that is what some of the brands are doing now. Some of the brands which were doing a very, they are into in one or two segments of business, but now they have expanded. Why? Brand name, right? So this is what brand can do. Brand can do wonders, provided if you have a strong brand reputation. And I would say, right, St. Joseph luckily has both. One of the assets which I already spoke about, the location. Most of our institutions are strategically located. It is not just the institutions, but also the brand reputation. St. Joseph has, over the period of, developed a strong brand, and this brand itself is enough for us to make more revenue for the institution. So let me quickly recollect the definition of.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
How exactly do you use St. Joseph brand name?
So how do we leverage St. Joseph brand name? I was giving you an example of our Sunday MBA training program. Our
Okay.
MBA training program is a training program in which there are more than 1,500 students. But when we started this program, there were only 7 students. So how did we able to attract 1,500 students? This program runs only on Sundays, not any other days. Sundays from 8 to 1:30, the program runs. The reason why we are able to get so many students is, of course, one of the point is the brand. Okay. Apart from brand, how do you attract customers? The answer is you have to give value for customers' money. Of course, we are doing both. The same program you study in Jain University, it runs in 3 lakhs. The same program you study here, it's much more affordable. So it has both value for money and also brand reputation. Instead of St. Joseph's, had it been some other institution, you would not have seen so many students. So whatever course we start, it is quite easy for us because we always run in overcapacity, right? Our BCom program, for one application, for every one seat, there are 25 applicants. For every one seat what we have, there are 25 applicants. Why there is a demand? Demand comes, one of the reasons is brand. right? So brand is what attracts people. So it's not easy to make brand. Again, you have to ensure that you deliver value. Delivering value is very important component of marketing. So when you deliver value, automatically the brand is created. So over the period of time, this brand has been created. Now tomorrow, St. Joseph's wants to do a new kind of let us say we want to venture into a hospital business. Right now, we are not into healthcare. We are only in education. But tomorrow, if we start St. Joseph's Hospital, people know already St. Joseph brand. So tomorrow, if we start hospital also, the brand is already known. The brand is already established. So it becomes easy for us to venture into new types of businesses because we are already an established brand, right? So that's the power of brand. Once you have a strong reputed brand, you can diversify into different types of businesses, and that is what most of the organizations do. If their brand is strong, they leverage that brand name and they expand into different kinds of businesses. A very good example is Reliance. It has so many different diversified businesses, right? The moment you hear Reliance, that's it, right? Now when Oreo was launched in India, since you have asked this question, I'll end with this example. When Oreo was launched in India, most of us didn't knew that Oreo was from Cadbury. So me and my colleague, we went to a small bakery to have a cup of tea there, and he got attracted by the blue color packet, biscuit packet. So he said, "Give me that." So when he saw Oreo, he said, "Okay, must be some local brand." So he said, "No, give me some other brand." Then I had to tell him, "Sir, this is not a local brand. It is from Cadbury." So the moment I said it's from Cadbury, he decided to eat it. So that's the power what Cadbury carries. So Cadbury is right now into chocolates and confectionaries. Tomorrow, if Cadbury want to venture into groceries also, people will blindly buy because Cadbury has a very strong brand reputation. So if you have strong brand reputation, very easy to diversify your business because you're already well established. Are you clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And having said that, now since you people are individuals, you also have to apply the definition of finance for yourself. So what is finance? Finance is an art and science of managing funds and other assets. So I said, how do companies make money? By leveraging their resources, by ensuring that they use their resources to best possible way to generate more and more money, right? So can you also do this? Can you also apply this principle to yourself? I did. I did this because when I quit corporate world, my mother was not happy because I was into a very good position, and my mother didn't want me to leave corporate job and get into teaching. So I had to tell her that, "Mother, don't worry." She was more worried about the financial aspects. She thought that I will not be able to make uh, good money in education industry the way you get paid well in corporate world. So she was worried about that, and every mother worries about the social status of the child because ultimately their thinking is from a long-term perspective, right? So you're a youngster, you're unmarried, so your finances plays an important role in for you to get a bride or a groom, right? So that's how society is, right? So I had to tell my mother that, okay, I'll manage, don't worry. So what I did, I started my career in a teaching industry. Then I was working at daytime. Then I thought, what am I doing in the evening? I have no work in the evening. So I thought, okay, let me work in some institution in the evening. So I started working as a part-timer in St. Joseph's Evening College. I was working both day and evening, so I was making money. Then I thought, okay, what am I doing on Sundays? Right? Sundays, literally, I'm free. There's nothing to do much. Of course, you have to spend, I mean, some time with your family. You should have leisure time. I used to do that, but again, there was too much of time. So I thought, okay, let me start teaching for this MBA executives, for the managers from different companies who come and study. So I started teaching MBA executive program. Then I thought, okay, all that ideas, what I have, why don't I share with others at a large scale? So then I started writing books. I got royalty. Then I started doing quiz shows, right? Then I started investing in stock market. You see, my qualification is that I'm a postgraduate like any other person. But what I've done is that I have understood what my skills are. I've done a critical appraisal of what is that I'm good at and how can I use my skills to make more and more money. So I'm thinking the way a manager thinks in a company. So same thing I want you people also to do. You have to understand your skill sets and you have to think that how well can I use these skill sets. How can I leverage my skills to make money for yourself, right? So that's what finance is all about. It's about making money, it's about managing funds, and it's about managing resources. So that concludes the definition of finance. Let me quickly recap. Finance is an art and science of managing funds and other resources. So do you people have any questions before I go into the next topic? On the definition of finance, do you have any questions? Any question, even if it is a,
No, sir.
yeah. No? You have? You can go ahead.
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, fine. Since you don't have any questions, we will move on to the scope of finance now. That means what are the different branches of finance that exist. So primarily we have three broader branches of finance. Now, since you are a finance student, you should know the fundamentals. So that's the reason I always start with fundamentals, because somebody who's not strong at basics, right, can't do well in the subject. So you should always have some basic foundation. Strong basic foundation is very essential. So three branches of finance. So you decide, I mean, you do an evaluation whether you're studying these branches in your PGDFM or not, right? Or if you have already studied some of these. So the first branch of finance, or the first field of finance, is called corporate finance. Corporate finance. In academics, we don't use the word corporate finance. We use the word financial management in academics. But technically, it's a corporate finance. It is also called as business finance. So either you can say corporate finance and business finance. The second branch of finance is called public finance. And the third one is called personal finance. So the subject which I'm teaching you in this semester has to do more with personal finance. Some of the other subjects, what you're studying, I'm not exactly sure the papers and their titles, what you're studying in this semester. But most of the subjects, what you would be studying in this semester is related to corporate finance or business finance. So how are these branches different from each other? And what is common in all these three branches of finance? So what does corporate finance deals with? So corporate finance is a very big branch in itself. It deals with, as the name suggests, it deals with companies, it deals with corporates. So corporate finance or financial management is basically a process of uh, raising funds, mobilizing funds, administrating funds, and controlling funds with an objective of maximizing the profits and increasing the wealth of the shareholders. So that's a typical definition of corporate finance. So corporate finance is a process of raising funds, mobilizing funds, administrating funds, and controlling funds with an objective of profit and wealth maximization. Now, the first step says raising funds, because without money, how will you start the business? Money is required not just for starting for business. You need money to start, you need money to survive also, right? And priorities have changed. If you had asked some corporate guy 30 years back, what is the priority? The answer would be profits. But now the priority is not profits. Don't think that any company that is new, right, that comes into the market, they will have a priority of making profits. No, no. Profit is not the immediate priority. The immediate priority is survival. The moment you start business, first you have to survive. Survive what? Survive the competition. Because the competition is so intense that it becomes difficult. Companies come into the market and disappear without our knowledge, right? Especially all that startups, what you see, since Bangalore is known as the startup capital of India, the number of companies that are born here, right? Sometimes we don't know when they came in the market and when they disappeared. Have you heard of Food Panda?
Yes, sir.
Some of you have ordered, right? So Swiggy is the market leader, followed by Zomato, and then we also had Food Panda. Where is Food Panda now? Food Panda has disappeared from the market, right? Why?
Yeah, but still it's operating, so
Is it operating?
yes, sir. You can still operate it.
So what happened to Food Panda? Why did Food Panda remain hungry? What is the reason for its performance, poor performance? Yeah, one of the simple answer is You can say various strategies. You can say pricing strategy. You can uh, in fact, you can do deep digging and find out the root cause analysis. But I'll just tell you the overall reason. The overall reason for its disappearance is the competition. So Food Panda could not compete with the competitors. That means competitors have better strategies than what Food Panda had to offer. It is as simple as that, right? So the the fact is that the moment you start a company, first you have to ensure that you establish yourself, you survive the competition, and focus on developing a unique value proposition. Right? You'd be surprised to know a company which is worth billions of dollars has not even delivered 1 rupee profit. You know what is Amazon's profit as of now? The answer is not even 1 rupee. Amazon's loss runs in crores. Flipkart has not even delivered 1 rupee profit till now. Paytm has not even delivered 1 rupee profit till now. Swiggy has not delivered any profit so far. Right? So you might ask question, sir, if these people are not delivering profit, then how are they managing? So the answer is, see, profit comes later. First is survival. First, you have to ensure that you develop a strong business model that is capable of surviving in the market. Then slowly start thinking about developing huge profits. So how did Flipkart turned out to be such a big company? How did Paytm became so popular? The answer is, initially when you start, you have to give offers, discounts, incentives, and that is where all that money, all your profit gets drained here only. Why you're not able to make any profit? Because you're giving so much of discounts and promotional offers to customers that you don't have profitable. Initially, when you start, it's all about spending huge amount of money, right? And this is what most of the companies are doing. They're just spending, they're burning cash. In finance language, it is called burning cash. So they borrow money, venture capitalists give them money in different series of funding. They burn, again they take money. So burn, take money, right? It might sound silly, but that's what they do. But over the period of time, they consolidate their losses. That means they slowly reduce these losses. And at one point in time, they become a profitable company. But in order for this to happen, it may take time, because first you have to reach that number one position in the market. So right now, Flipkart is in consolidation stage. That means they have steeply decreased their losses. So next few years, they'll be in a position to deliver high amount of profits. And same thing with Paytm. Paytm is also in consolidation stage now. That means they are minimizing their losses. Now they are slowly progressing towards profits. So the point here is, I was telling you the definition of corporate finance. So corporate finance is a process of first raising funds, right? Now, raising funds, mobilizing and administration, controlling. So these are the terms which I've used, which can be split into different decisions. So in corporate finance, you have to take 4 important decisions. If you remember this, it's quite, I think it's enough. But I just want to give you an overview of corporate finance. So corporate finance primarily deals with 4 important decisions. Decision number 1, financing decision. Decision number 2, investment decisions. Decision number 3, dividend decision. Decision number 4, liquidity decisions. So if you are successful at managing these 4 important decisions, then automatically your company will grow. The first is financing decisions, which means you have to decide from where to get the money from. It might sound a very simple decision, but it's not that easy to get funds, right? So what are the different options available? Can a new company which has just started, can they borrow money from public by issuing shares? What do you think? Why do you think that Paytm and Flipkart is not issuing shares? In fact, Flipkart is now planning big. It is planning for an IPO in USA, right? But can a startup directly issue shares to public? Is that allowed? What do you think?
So
Start,
it is allowed, but you wouldn't get minimum subscription, which is required to allot shares.
no,
No one is aware.
okay. Now, SEBI has its own criteria. The regulator in India is Securities Exchange Board of India. In USA, the regulator is SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. So any company that wants to borrow funds from public has to meet those criteria. And all these startups do not meet the criteria because they're relatively new. And if you look at the criteria of SEBI, it says your last 5 years profit should be so much. Your last 10 years turnover should be so much. I am relatively new. Where will I have turnover? Where will I have history of making profits? So therefore, startups do not get the privilege of borrowing money from public. And that's the reason why startups always go to venture capitalists. Because venture capitalists will give all the money not based on the collateral what they have. In fact, new startup will not have any collaterals also. So entire funding is given purely based on the idea, purely on the basis of idea, right? So for a startup, the only option of getting fund is to go for a venture capitalist. But for already a well-established organization, there are plenty of options. You can issue shares, you can go for debentures, you can go for bonds, you can borrow money from foreign markets, right? Since now we are living in a globalized economy, it's not necessary that being an Indian company, you should only think of borrowing money from Indian market. Now it is possible to borrow money from any market, any country in the world, right? So one of the important decision is to decide where to borrow the money from, which source of funding is good. Now, I want to ask you, how will you decide which is the best source of funding? On what basis? Let us say you're already an established company, you have a very good track record of making profits, giving dividends to shareholder, right? You have already earned respect in the market. Now you want to go for an expansion, major expansion. Which source of funding would you choose? Option number one, would you go for issue of new shares again? Would you go for debentures? Or would you go for a bank loan? Or would you go to a venture capitalist? Or would you go for a strategic sale to some other company? Which option would you choose? Options are plenty, right? But I want to know what would be the deciding criteria. On what basis do you choose which finance is good source? Which source
Cost of
is,
capital.
what is the criteria? Can you repeat?
Cost of capital. So whatever
Very good.
source you use, the cost of capital has to be less.
Very good. So one of the important criteria is the cost of capital. What's the second criteria? What's the other side of the coin? One is cost, of course. What is the other side of the coin?
Is it returns, like where you invest? What would be the returns like?
That you will think in the other next decision. Right now, the first decision in corporate finances, financing decision.
Yeah.
You have got whatever you want. The next decision is to invest that money. There you will think of returns. But here, when you're borrowing money, you're not thinking about the return. Okay, let me ask you a question as an individual. Let's say you're an individual. You also want to start a business after completing your graduation. Now you have chosen to start a restaurant, right? And these are your options. Option number one, you have your money which you have saved because you have been working in corporate for a long time. You have some savings, solid savings available. Option number two, your parents are also willing to give you money because they also from a very good financial background. They also have plenty of financial resources. So if you want, you can borrow from your parents. Third, you can also indulge your friends, ask them to go for a partnership, and they are also willing to contribute. Option number five or option number four, we can also take a loan from a bank. These are your options. Which one would you choose and why?
Sir, I would go from bank loan.
Okay, so you have chosen bank loan, even though you had your own,
Yes, sir.
or even though your parents were willing to give you. What was your decide?
Sir, what capital you're having is it should be kept for backup because when new starter is there, so there is no certainty that you will make profit. So there is always up and down. So if you're taking loans from bank and if you make profit, so you're clearing the loan and paying the EMI fair enough. But
Okay.
in middle, if any up and down comes, so you have your own capital to, use it as backup and secure your business.
Okay, fine. That's one
So
perspective.
that's what my point is.
Okay, any other points? Any other opinion? But
So one
yeah,
risk
go ahead,
sharing,
please.
risk sharing, like you wouldn't want to take the burden of risk on yourself, so you try to divide it among your partners. Like if you have friends, so you combinedly invest and share risk. So even that could be a criteria to choose.
Very good. See, now the answers are coming up. The other side of the coin has already come up, risk. So what are the two different criteria for borrowing funds? Criteria number one, cost. Criteria number two, risk. Hasib has chosen loan, and when we critically evaluate loan as a source of funding, it has both. Cost is high, right? Using your own funds. Yes, of course, in finance we also have opportunity cost. But if we bar that opportunity cost, there is no money. I mean, you're using your own money. You don't have to pay anybody. Bank charges you 18% interest. But if you use your own money, you don't have to pay that 18% interest. Second, risk. Tomorrow, if you run into losses, what the bank will do? The bank will sell all your assets and it will take back your money. In case if the assets are not sufficient, you may go to jail also, right? So that risk is also something that needs to be considered. You have to evaluate both cost, risk, and choose a source of funding in which both are minimal. Cost is also less, risk is also less. And that is what in finance we say optimal capital structure. So what is optimal capital structure? It's a source of funding which has a balance. That means lesser risk, lesser cost. Right? I mean, we can do a critical appraisal of all these sources of funding, but I just wanted to see what is the criteria for decision making. So now you're clear that the first decision in corporate finance is a funding decision, where to get the money from, also known as financing decision. And what is the deciding factor? The deciding factor is cost and risk. Now the second decision, after you have, let's say you wanted 50 lakh rupees, you got it. What will you do with that money? The answer is you have to buy assets, because assets are the one which will help you to generate revenue for your business. So you have to invest that money in assets, and these assets will help you to make money for your business. So when you're investing in assets, what is the criteria? One of the criteria is already given by your friend: return. Return is a very important factor. So we have to always see return, how much the return is, right? See, as a businessman, let's say I have a lot of money with me, but I'm contemplating which business to go into right now. Should I go into retailing, or should I go into telecom, or should I start an airline company now? I have money, but I want to evaluate proposals. I have three proposals: either to start a retail chain, right? A set of retail stores. Option number two, start a new telecom company with 5G. Option number two, start a new airline company. How will I decide which one is good? So as your friend said, evaluate all this investment proposal in terms of returns. How much is the return? But that's the only one factor. But there are other factors also which we have to keep in mind. Can you please think and tell me, apart from return, what are the other factors for evaluating an investment proposal?
Break-even point of the business, sir.
Very good. This break-even, what he has mentioned, is also known as liquidity. How quickly can you convert your investment into cash? Are you willing to wait 20 years? Are you willing to wait 10 years? Are you willing to wait 5 years? Or you want the money quickly? So break-even point, or also known as liquidity. How quickly you can get back your amount what you have invested. So this is criteria number 2. One more important criteria.
Can we consider competition, market competition?
Okay, that is more of a, that is not in terms of finance. What you mentioned is a very good point, but that is from the viewpoint of strategy, from the viewpoint of the management. I'm talking in terms of finance. Now you might say that, okay, sir, if you venture into retail business, the competition is less. If you venture into telecom business, the competition is less, because now hardly we have few companies, right? Hardly there are few telecom companies in India left out. But if I venture into aviation business or airline business, there are already so many competitors. So that perspective is more of a marketing side, not from the finance point of view. Of course, it has finance connection, because when you have too many competitors, you need more money. Why you need more money when you have too many competitors? The simple reason that you have to spend a lot of money to attract customers. So you need to do more of advertisement, promotion, all this is required, right? So anyways, that's also a point. Competition, yes, but that's more of a marketing and strategy related. I'm asking you purely finance. Anybody else? Jessica,
Yes, sir.
what's your opinion? What is the other point which we have to consider while investing? One is return, the other one is liquidity, how quickly you can. What are the other criterias?
Um, the security of the investment.
Okay, so you're thinking as an individual, which is very good, right? Of course, if I'm investing as an individual, I'll think, okay, is it safe or not? But is there any safe business in the world,
No.
right? But the point which you have made is actually correct, but you have used a different word. Instead of using the word risk, you have used the word security.
Security.
Yes.
Yeah.
The third factor is the risk.
Okay.
The coin of return. The other side of return is
Risk.
right.
No.
So the point which Sana mentioned, competition, can be incorporated in risk factor.
Yes,
If
sir.
I do telecom business, you might say there are no competitors. That means risk is less. If I do airline business, already so many airline companies are there, so risk is more. Right. So this is how we evaluate investment proposals. Next semester, there is one more paper in which we will study all this, how to evaluate investment proposals. But anyways, now you're clear that the first decision is financing decision. The second one is called the investment decision. And the third one is called dividend decision. Means that after investing all the profit, what you earn, what do you like to do with that profit? Would you like to share the profit with the shareholders? Or would you like to keep the profit in reserve so that you can use it for future purpose? How you want to use your profits is a third decision what you have to take, also known as dividend decision. And the last decision in corporate finance is called liquidity decision, which is more of a day-to-day operations. Have you come across any of your friend in your college life or school life who's actually a millionaire, but if you ask 100 rupees, he will say, I don't have. And probably he might show his wallet also, see, I don't have.
Yes,
What,
sir.
what it means is this guy is financially strong, but he has a liquidity problem. He does not have cash. So this is what the fourth decision of the business deals with: cash, liquidity, right? Because organizations might be very good in terms of the finances and resources what they have, but at times what will happen, you might end up into a liquidity crunch. That means your business is not generating sufficient cash. That means you have sold things, but you're not able to convert your other assets into cash. You're not able to convert your inventory into cash. You're not able to convert your debtors into cash. You're not able to convert your bills receivables into cash, right? All this what I've just identified: bills receivable, debtors, uh, they are all part of working capital. So liquidity decisions deals with working capital management. So in case if your working capital management is not efficient, possibility is there that you might end up in liquidity crunch and your company might get shut also. So liquidity, if I'm not wrong, there is a subject called working capital management also in your,
Yes, sir.
I think you're studying in this semester.
Yes, sir.
So then I don't have to talk about much on working capital because you have an exclusive subject on working capital. So that's the fourth decision of corporate finance: working capital management. So this is what does, now if somebody asks you what is corporate finance, now you're in a position to tell them that corporate finance deals with four important decisions. Decision number one: financing, investment, dividend, liquidity. All these four decisions should help the company to increase the wealth of the shareholders. Now, how will the wealth of the shareholders increase? How can you increase the wealth of the shareholders? Well,
With the return of the business, sir.
returns, yes, of course, profit is important.
Goodwill.
But you see, in the ultimate goal of finance is not profit maximization. Profit maximization is one of the old, outdated objective. Now the objective is wealth maximization. The answer is whose wealth? The answer is shareholders' wealth. So how can we maximize shareholders' wealth? Simple: by ensuring that the market price of your company's share increases in the stock exchange. The moment the market price of the share increases in the stock exchange, I as a shareholder will become rich, right? Imagine if your share price is 300 rupees in the year 2017, now it has become 3000. That means the share price has increased by 2700 rupees. Imagine if I am the shareholder, if I have 1 lakh shares in your company, I would become a millionaire, right? This is what I want. Why have I invested in your company? Because I want you to manage your company in such a way that I become rich. That's the ultimate motive of corporate finance. to increase the wealth of the shareholders. Companies who don't do this, that means there is something wrong in their management, something wrong in their strategy, something wrong in their marketing, something wrong in their finances, right? So that's how it is. So that's the ultimate objective, right? So if as a company, if you're not able to do that, that means you have failed. You have failed. Simple, right? Most of you know this brand called Cafe Coffee Day. Cafe Coffee Day. Most of you have,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
right? Now, what is the situation of Cafe Coffee Day? Financially, they are doing terribly bad, right? There was a
Yeah.
time when the share price was 400 to 500 rupees, but now the share price is in tens, within 100 rupees. The share price has fallen down within 100 rupees. So where is the wealth maximization? In fact, wealth of the shareholders is completely eroded. A share worth 400 rupees has become 40 rupees. Something terribly has gone wrong. So
So I
what
have a
went wrong?
question.
Yes.
So what are the factors that influence the share price?
Various factors. So there are three important factors. One is the economy. So in fact, you have asked a question which is direct related to the subject what I am teaching to you, right? Security and portfolio
Yes, sir.
management.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the factors is the economic factors. Economy is economy within the control of the company? Economy is not within the control of the company. GDP, per capita income, uh, exchange rates, inflation, interest rates. These are not within the control of the companies, but these are the factors will affect the performance of the share. So what happened during lockdown? There was no consumption. What happened to the share price? The stock market crashed. When the lockdown was announced, share market crashed because all our macroeconomic indicators are terribly bad. Even now, our GDP is in negative, -7. So one of the factors is the macroeconomic factors. Second is the company related factors. Company has its own internal factors, which can be broadly classified into two factors: quantitative factors, qualitative factors. Qualitative factors includes governance, leadership. Why did Cafe Coffee Day fail? Two reasons comes out: leadership, governance. This is the reason why Cafe Coffee Day failed: leadership, governance. Right? Why did Kingfisher fail? Leadership, governance, and of course marketing is also one of the reason. So there are qualitative factors like leadership, governance, strategy, marketing, and then there are quantitative factors like your profits. So these are the reasons why share prices keep fluctuating, because of the company related factors or macroeconomic factors.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So you as a company, if you're not able to deliver on this wealth maximization, you will not be able to stay along in the competition. One or the other day you will collapse, right? You have to ensure that you deliver on this, which is maximization of wealth of the shareholders. Only if that happens, shareholders will, right, be happy. Otherwise, it's a big loss to them, right? So this is what corporate finance is all about. It deals with companies, right? Now we have to also discuss about public finance and then personal finance, because my subject is more of a subject that is into personal finance and not into the other domains. So we will have more discussion on personal finance and a little bit about public finance. Since I was explaining you the scope of finance, so it's better to touch upon all the other aspects. And you should also know as a finance student what are the different domains within finance. And you can also develop your own personal interest, whether you want to study more into corporate finance or you should get into personal finance. But you should have an overall picture of all the three categories of finance. So if you guys have any questions on the lecture which we did today, you can go ahead and ask questions. The more questions you ask, it is good, because please don't take this PG diploma as the way you have taken your undergraduation, right? Because most of the students, what they do, they study from the viewpoint of examination, which should not happen. You should study to learn the concepts, to apply those concepts. From those concepts, you should get benefit. That's how it should be. You should use the subject for your own personal benefit also, right? So it should not be only writing exam and passing. That's not the goal of this program at all, right? So that's something which you would have done in your higher secondary or maybe degree, but it's more you have to use whatever we discuss in your class today. You should practically think and apply those concepts. So whenever you see something in the newspaper, in the media, try to relate those concepts, right? So anyways, I'll try to ensure that you get as much as the practical exposure to the concepts what we discuss in the classroom. So if you have any questions before we wind up the class, you can go ahead and ask. Follerin has not asked any question.
No questions, sir.
Okay, so she does not have any questions, which means that she.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask about the study material.
Study
Will
material. I'm not sure about the other teachers, but I give material to my students because I want to ensure that they use the concept what they learn in the classroom in their personal life, in their professional life, and also also get good marks in the examination. Right. So examination point of view, I'll give you study material which you can access at any time. But what I do is I give the material once the chapter is over. Once I complete one particular chapter, immediately I give you the study material and they will have a quick assessment on that chapter. Maybe in the form of a quiz or kind of a mock test or kind of an assignment or an activity. So once I complete a chapter, immediately I'll share notes with soft copy of notes, which is as good as a textbook, but not detailed as a textbook. Don't want to learn, right? But I'll be sharing you some of the good textbooks available in the market. So if you have time, you can buy those textbooks, but study material will be given.
So, did you share the syllabus in the beginning?
I will. In fact, I wanted to share in today's class. We do have a group. Do we have a separate group for finance?
No, sir.
We do not have. Okay, last time we had one. But anyways, I don't know whether I can share the file here. I'll do one thing. I'll share the file in the next class. Or
Okay, sir.
yeah, in the next class I'll share the file with you. Next class is I think on Saturdays, right? Saturdays we have our class. Or maybe one of you can take the initiative and have an exclusive group for only finance, because last time we had separate group for PGDFM. So most of the teachers who teach, they'll share their resources, maybe a presentation, maybe a video or a study material or syllabus. It can be shared there also on a WhatsApp group. So if one of you can take the initiative of adding everybody and creating a separate PGDFM group, because PGD HRM students will have their own WhatsApp group. So if you can do it, otherwise anyways, I'll share the details.
So, there is a group which I think Christo sir had created.
That's a common group for everybody.
Okay.
Okay, there is one PGD FM group also, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So I'll do one thing. I'll share the syllabus in that group.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll wind up today's session if you do not have any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
sir.
day.
Bye.